8:19 p.m. St. Ridge ER erupted as paramedics rushed in a wounded Navy SEAL, half conscious, bleeding through a shredded tactical shirt. Doctors closed in, shouting orders, but the SEAL suddenly snapped awake. Wild, terrified, refusing their hands. "Don't touch me!" he roared, kicking off monitors. Even security froze. This wasn't panic. This was combat mode. A rookie nurse stepped forward, tiny, soft-spoken, overlooked by everyone. The kind interns joked about behind her back. She shouldn't have gotten anywhere near him, but she did. And when she whispered 6 quiet syllables only 3 men on Earth knew, the SEAL froze. All the rage drained from his face. He slowly lowered himself back onto the bed and whispered, trembling, "Ma'am, is that really you?" And in one heartbeat, the entire ER learned. The rookie nurse they dismissed was the only reason his unit ever made it home alive. Before we begin, take 2 seconds to comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe. It truly keeps these stories alive. Thank you. Now, let's return to St. Ridge. 8:19 p.m. wasn't supposed to be chaos. It wasn't supposed to be blood, torn gear, or the sound a man makes when pain meets memory in the worst way. But tonight, the automatic ER doors blasted open with paramedics shouting over a gurney dripping red. A Navy SEAL, identified only by the faint trident patch still clinging to his shredded tactical shirt, gasped against the oxygen mask, half conscious, half ready to fight a war all over again. "GSW entry shoulder, exit flank, BP unstable, cardio guarded." Paramedics rattled codes, stats, and language civilians barely understood, but doctors didn't hear. They saw the uniform, the scars, the combat tattoos, and suddenly every resident surgeon wanted to be the hero. "Clamp it! Prep or? No, he needs trauma bay. Move. Someone sedate him!" The SEAL snapped awake. Not confused, not medicated, trained. He shoved the oxygen away and roared with a force that shook the sterile walls. "Don't touch me!" Monitors crashed to the floor. An IV pole hit tile. Security, mid-shift sandwich still in hand, sprinted. "This man is dangerous," one doctor hissed under his breath. "No soldier wakes up like that unless he's burned by memories." They circled him. White coats, latex gloves, arrogance. But the SEAL wasn't seeing them. He was seeing something burning, distant, buried, sand, night vision. A radio code whispered through static. He kicked off the compression straps, teeth clenched so hard a vein pulsed down his neck. "No restraints," security ordered. "He's in combat psychosis. Back away." And for a moment, everyone did. Residents whispered, "Another vet with trauma. Someone call psych." Wild dog training. Typical military. They thought they were quiet. He heard every word. Then, the room shifted. A nurse nobody noticed walked in, not a surgeon. Not command, not decorated. Rookie badge, blonde hair in a simple bun. Soft face, soft voice, soft presence, the sort the ER chewed and spit out. Lena Ward, carrying nothing more threatening than a tray of pain management meds. She didn't flinch, didn't react, didn't even look impressed by the hurricane of doctors arguing over protocols. She just stepped into the eye of it. "Ward, get out of there. You're not cleared for combative trauma. This is not a student case." She didn't look at any of them. She looked at him. The SEAL's chest heaved. Sweat streaked war paint down his cheek. His hand twitched toward where a weapon used to be. Lana didn't back up. She whispered. 6 syllables, quiet, precise, deadly accurate. A linguistic fingerprint tied to a single classified unit. And every doctor, every nurse, every security officer paused. Not because they understood the words, but because he did. The SEAL froze. His fingers unclenched. His shoulders dropped. The combat glaze in his eyes shattered. Slowly, impossibly, he lowered himself back onto the gurney, chin trembling, eyes locked on hers. Doc Ward," he breathed. The name cracked in the space between them. You... It's really you?" Whispers busted open like a dam. "Doc Ward? She's just a nurse, isn't she?" What is happening right now? Lena felt heat crawl up her throat. Not embarrassment. Recognition. Memory. Unwanted. Unburied. The SEAL reached for her wrist. Not forceful. Grateful. "You saved us," he whispered, voice shaking now. Not from pain, but reverence. Doctors exchanged glances. What did they just witness? Security looked embarrassed to be holding tasers and zip ties against a man who just saluted a nurse with his eyes. Lena swallowed. Her voice, when she used it, barely rose above a breath. Don't do that. Not here. But he did. He sat straighter, ignoring his bleeding flank, and saluted her anyway. Not military formality, recognition, debt. History too heavy to speak out loud. Residents stared like the floor had opened. Someone muttered, "Did he just salute a nurse?" But he wasn't done. His hand dropped, shaking, not from injury but memory. "Ma'am," he whispered, eyes shining. Who else made it out? The question hung like smoke. Lena didn't answer. Couldn't. Her heartbeat thudded once. Fallujah broken radio's names erased off rosters. 3 bodies she couldn't save. The room didn't know what they'd just stepped into. They thought this was a trauma case. It wasn't. It was a resurrection. Behind her, Dr. Reeves, sure, arrogant spine of the ER, scoffed loud enough for everyone to hear. "This drama is unnecessary, Sergeant. You're in shock. Nurse Ward, step aside." But the SEAL turned to him, ice replacing tears. "You so much as touch me before she clears it," he rasped. "I'll walk out bleeding." Reeves blanched, because this wasn't a threat. This was a soldier stating a certainty. Lena didn't flinch, didn't brag, didn't correct anyone. She just said, "Let me see the wound." Even Dr. Reeves went silent. She peeled back soaked gauze, took one look, and every drop of color left her face. It wasn't the injury, it was how it was done. Where, angle, placement. She recognized the signature. The unit tactic, the ambush style. Only one group used it. Only one mission classified it. Only one file erased it. She whispered, barely audible. "No, not again." The SEAL's eyes widened. "You remember," he said, not asking, knowing. She nodded. Once, not rookie, not trainee, not sweet ward who works late shifts. Ghost of a medic who was never supposed to survive. The room's chaos dimmed. No beeping monitors, no barking surgeons, no rustling scrubs, just truth, finally unmasked. The SEAL leaned closer, voice cracking. "Lena? Who else survived?" She opened her mouth, her past pressing against her ribs like shrapnel. But before she could answer, the injured SEAL suddenly arched, gasping hard. Monitors spiked, blood surged, alarms blared, and the ER snapped back alive. Vitals crashing. Code trauma. Get respiratory. Now! Lena grabbed gauze, pressure, assessment all at once. Muscle memory from a life she buried. But as she anchored his pulse, hands steady, eyes locked on his, she knew exactly what the next words would be. Words she never wanted to hear again. Reeves shouted them. "He's losing pressure. If we don't open that shoulder artery, he'll lose the arm." And every eye swung to her, as if suddenly remembering. She was the only one he trusted to save it. The SEAL locked onto her fading gaze, whispering through pain. "Ma'am, please don't let them take my arm." The SEAL lay on the bed. No straps, no restraints, just breathing hard, eyes locked on the one person who could keep him from spiraling again. Lena Ward. She stood beside him, hands clasped loosely, posture quiet enough to disappear, steady enough to hold the entire room in place. Nobody dared speak, not after what they'd just witnessed. A man trained to endure interrogation, capture, dehydration, starvation, blood loss, unraveled by the touch of highly paid surgeons, but calmed by 6 whispered syllables from a nurse they barely noticed. Dr. Harper cleared his throat first, the sound clipped, embarrassed, still trying to hold on to authority. "Whatever code word you used, Nurse Ward," he muttered, "it doesn't change the fact that he needs surgical clearance. He has ballistic trauma. Internal, not ballistic," Lena said softly, every head turned. He was hit by concussive mortar debris, fragmentation, not a direct projectile. That's why the bleed pattern is lateral instead of deep. Harper blinked. Excuse me, but how would you know that?" She didn't answer. She didn't have to, because the SEAL did. "In Mosul," he rasped, voice raw but proud. "Doc Ward was the one who patched half the unit after we got hit at the comms tower. She didn't need scans then either. She read wounds the way some generals read maps." The word doc hit the room like a fist. Not nurse, not rookie, not intern, not quiet girl, doc. It was Harper who stepped back now, uncertainty bending his spine. But Lena didn't stand taller, didn't hint at satisfaction, didn't flash any pride. She just adjusted the SEAL's IV with gentle, practiced precision. "Your vitals are stabilizing," she murmured to him. His jaw flexed. "My vitals stabilize when you tell them to, same as before." The monitors beeped steadily behind him, not perfect, but obedient. She nodded once and turned to leave, to slip back into the background the way she always did. But the SEAL reached suddenly, fingers wrapping around her wrist, not gripping with force, but recognition. "Don't walk away this time." The room held still. Lena's breath caught, not from fear, but memory. Old sand in her lungs, old radio static in her ears. A field medic's heartbeat against a dirt floor while helos circled overhead with no place to land. Dr. Harper tried to interject again. "Look, whatever field history you two share, we still need—" "No," the SEAL snapped, fire returning to his voice. "You need her." "She doesn't need you," gasps scattered. "You don't talk to the chief trauma surgeon that way." But he wasn't talking as a patient. He was talking as a man who'd watched Lena Ward lay herself across a bleeding comrade while artillery fell so close, it shook the ground under her knees. Lena gently released her wrist from his grasp. "I'm here. I just don't do command posts anymore." "You never did," he said quietly. "You just kept us alive when command forgot we existed." That silenced even Harper. A young resident whispered near the supply cart. "She's not really a rookie, is she?" Lena forced a thin smile. "I left that world behind. I left him behind." The SEAL's eyes softened, not with pity, but with the kind of respect men carve into memorial stones. "He died a hero, Lena. Your partner didn't fall because you failed." "Stop," she whispered. And for the first time, Harper, the residents, even security realized this wasn't a story she polished for attention. This was a wound. A wound deeper than the one on the gurney. The SEAL eased back, pain threading through his voice. "I thought the intel was wrong when they said all medics were KIA that night. I prayed they were wrong. Turns out, they were." Lena stepped back without answering, because if she spoke, every brick she stacked between her past and her pulse might crumble. Harper, sensing control slip again, cleared his throat. "We need imaging, now. And I need to know exactly what that code means." "It means she's the reason I'm not a name on a wall," the SEAL said. "It means when the backup convoy was 22 miles off course and comms blacked out and command knew we'd be surrounded, the person who dragged 6 of us through debris and gunfire wasn't a SEAL, wasn't a captain." His eyes flicked toward Lena. She was our ghost medic with no extraction clearance and no evacuation window. She stayed when even God turned away. No one moved. Even the ventilators paused in reverence. Harper swallowed harshly. "And her partner?" The SEAL answered because she couldn't. "He shielded her when they opened fire on our evac point. He pushed her behind the last wall still standing." Lena stared at the floor, jaw tight, sunlight-colored hair falling forward like a curtain. Harper looked gutted suddenly, as if the equation between arrogance and humility had just balanced violently inside him. "I didn't know." "You weren't supposed to," Lena whispered, finally looking up. "That's why I left. That's why I don't correct anyone when they call me rookie." Her voice didn't break, but the room did. The SEAL reached for her hand again, carefully this time, permission unspoken. "If they survived that night," he said quietly, "they survived because of you." She shook her head. "No, they died because I couldn't stop all of it." "You stopped enough of it for some of us to come home. Don't rewrite the battlefield." The heart monitor beeped in rhythm, softer now, and not crisis, but truth settling in. Harper exhaled slowly. "I'd like you to assist on his reconstruction, not as a nurse, as whatever title you earned over there." Lena blinked. Titles, ranks, badges, patches, all the things she folded into a box beneath her bed years ago. She didn't nod. She didn't smile. She just whispered, "I'll do what I've always done. I'll keep him alive." And finally, Harper stepped aside, monitoring, not leading, because leadership had just changed hands. Lena turned back to the SEAL, pushing his hair away from his damp forehead like someone who'd done it on a field cot. while mortars thundered too close. "You're stable," she murmured. "You're safe." He nodded, but his hand still held hers, barely, just enough to say don't vanish again. She stayed until his breathing steadied, until the monitors had exhaled with him. She stayed until the trauma hall remembered how to move without fear. Only then did she step back. And as she reached the doorway, the entire ER looked at her, not with shock now, not with confusion, but with reverence. No more rookie, no more overlooked nurse, no more soft background girl, just Lena Ward, the medic who didn't die, the medic who lived, the medic who carried ghosts, so others didn't have to. She paused at the threshold. Harper whispered the words first, voice faint. "We judged you without knowing your war." Lena didn't turn around. She simply said, "Never judge a uniform or the silence that follows it. If you believe quiet heroes deserve to be seen, comment below. Never judge." The room settled into a strange, reverent quiet after the code reveal. But nothing about this moment felt calm inside Lena Ward. She stood near the foot of the bed, arms stiff to her sides, nails pressing into her palms to keep her own pulse controlled. Navy SEAL Captain Eli Sharp, battle-hard, blood-dry, half-conscious just moments ago, now looked at her with the kind of recognition people only show when they see a ghost. Except the ghost was her. Eli's breathing had steadied, but his eyes never left her face. "They told me you didn't make it out," he murmured. "So quiet the surgeons didn't hear it over the machine beeps. They told us no one did." Lena held the chart a little tighter, jaw working, throat burning with answers she didn't owe anyone. Not here, not tonight, not in a brightly lit ER with interns staring like they just watched the floor drop open. Across the room, Dr. Ellison cleared his throat, loud, defensive, rattled. "Captain Sharp, we need to continue assessing your neurological response. Nurse Ward, step back." Eli didn't even blink at him. "She stays." It wasn't a growl, it wasn't a plea, it was an order. One Ellison was not accustomed to receiving from anyone in scrubs. Lena didn't move closer, but she didn't step back either. Ellison tried again. "Sir, she's not cleared to—" "She's my medic," Eli cut in, voice hoarse but absolute. "Stamped in blood, sand, and classified ink. If your team wants me conscious, she stays in this room." The heartbeat monitor ticked steadily, but the ER's energy shifted again. Less panic, more curiosity, awe, maybe something like guilt. The residents started whispering among themselves, the same ones who had laughed when Lena tripped over the supply cart last week, who called her quiet mouse when she didn't bark orders like the others. Now they couldn't even look her in the eye. Lena didn't want their awe. She didn't want their apologies. She wanted to breathe without the invisible desert dust crushing her ribs. Eli watched her, head slightly tilted, breathing shallow. "You're shaking," he said quietly. She wasn't, not visibly, but he saw it anyway. He had always seen more than he said. Always looked through noise, status, uniform tags, past rank. "I just need to update your chart," she said, voice steady. "You're deflecting," he answered just as steadily. The room faded. For just a heartbeat, Lena was no longer surrounded by disinfectant and clipped orders. She was back in that blown-out limestone corridor, night burning, copper in her mouth, hands cramping while she held pressure on his thoracic bleed, praying command wasn't wrong about the extraction time. Then his voice dragged her back. "What happened to the rest of our team, Lena?" That name, not Nurse Ward, not Miss, not Ma'am. Lena. The way only 3 people in her lifetime had ever said it. 2 of them were gone. She looked at the clipboard. Not at him, not at anyone. "We are not talking about that here." Eli exhaled slowly. Even wounded, he understood her tone. A hospital hallway was no place to exhume dead soldiers. Across the room, Dr. Myers, young, cocky, always pushing for publications, spoke up. "This is ridiculous. I don't care who she patched up overseas. You're injured. You're in shock. You're misidentifying memories and roles. Nurse Ward is a second-year civilian nurse who—" Eli turned his head, and somehow that tiny motion carried more threat than raised voices ever could. "Myers," he said, voice low. "In Kandahar, I watched this second-year civilian nurse stitch 3 men with a flashlight between her teeth and sniper fire clipping stone inches from her skull. Don't disrespect what you don't understand." Myers' mouth fell open, and for once words didn't come. Lena closed her eyes for half a second. She hated this. Not the respect, the resurrection. The past had teeth. And once it smelled daylight, it bit. A soft rustle cut through the silence. The curtain being pulled aside. A man in a pressed hospital administration badge stepped in. Bald, stern, unblinking. "Captain Sharp," he announced. "We've been notified of your arrival and require a private conversation." Eli didn't even look at him. "Not now." Lena frowned. "What department?" "Veterans Transition Oversight," he said, too fast, too smooth. Eli's eyes hardened. "No. Wrong badge. Wrong tone. Try again." The man paused, then smiled, a thin administrative smile that never reached his eyes. "Nurse Ward," he said, "we are also going to need you to accompany us. Your military experience appears to have relevance." Her stomach tightened. Just like that, the air turned cold. This wasn't a routine check-in. This was interest. Custodial interest. "I'm not cleared for any government debrief," she said evenly. "I'm discharged." "That," he said, still smiling, is exactly why we need to speak." Eli pushed himself up straighter, ignoring the IV lines in pain. "She's not leaving this room." "With respect," the man replied, "it isn't your call." 3 residents stepped back. Ellison's pen clattered to the floor. Something about the man's tone reached the primal parts of every military-adjacent ear in the room. This was not a paperwork visit. Lena's pulse kicked harder. Not fear, instinct, training. The old kind, the buried kind. Eli saw it in her face. "Don't go with him," he murmured. The man clasped his hands calmly. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. Nurse Ward's presence is requested by a branch you have no authority to question." He reached inside his coat slowly, too slowly. Security stiffened. Myers swallowed. The entire ER inhaled as though one set of lungs. Then he placed a sealed envelope on the counter. Thick, stamped, no insignia, no sender, no clearance level. Just her old name, HM 2 Ward, L Hospital Corpsman 2nd Class. Not Nurse Ward. "Your past," the man said softly, "never actually ended. It simply waited for the right patient to wake up." Lena's fingertips tingled. The fluorescent lights hummed. Somewhere down the hall, a monitor beeped steadily, grounding the world. Eli whispered, jaw clenched, "Don't open it." But she already knew she would. She reached out, touched the edge of the envelope, and froze. Because printed beneath her name were 3 words she had prayed she'd never see again. Operation Echo Glass. It wasn't just classified. It was buried. Erased. Burned. And if it was resurfacing, then someone wasn't done with her, not by a long shot. Lena lifted the envelope. The man stepped back. Eli reached for her wrist. And the room, every doctor, every intern, every machine, held its breath as she slid her thumb beneath the seal. The paper inside wasn't paperwork. It was a list of names. She read the top one. Her throat closed. Captain Eli Sharp, alive. The next name, Corpsman Lena Ward. Status reactivated. Before she could speak, security radios crackled to life. Requesting immediate lockdown. Military liaison incoming. And in the ringing silence that followed, Lena finally understood. The past didn't return for closure. It returned for duty. And she wasn't done yet. Monitors screamed before the words even left his mouth. Red alarms, jagged lines, oxygen dipping. The seal's hand crushed Lena's wrist with surprising strength for a man barely hanging on. "Don't let anyone else touch me," he rasped. Then his eyes rolled back. For half a second, the whole ER froze. Then everything detonated into motion. "Fib! He's crashing!" a resident shouted. The attending lunged for the crash cart. "Get her out of here!" Lena didn't move. She stepped closer. "Push back," she said. Quiet, but it cut straight through the noise. Nobody listened. The attending shoved past her, already reaching for the paddles. "Charge to 200. You do that and you'll shred what's left of his conduction system," Lena snapped, hand shooting out to stop him. "Look at the pattern. This isn't primary cardiac." He glared at her like she was insane. "Nurse, I am not going to argue with you while he dies." "He's not dying," Lena fired back, eyes on the monitor. "He's drowning." That made one of the residents hesitate. "Look at his neck veins," she added. "Listen to the right lung. He's building pressure. You shock him now. You don't fix the real problem. You just fry the wiring while the house is still on fire." The attending faltered, only for a heartbeat. But it was enough. Lena grabbed the stethoscope from around his neck without asking, pressing it to the SEAL's chest, then moved swiftly to his side again. She tilted her head, listening, not just to the sound, but to everything else. The rise, the fall, the strain. Right-sided tension physiology, she murmured. Secondary to blast and fluid shift. He's not in a pure arrhythmia, his heart's choking for room. Even if you're right, the attending snapped, this isn't a war zone. We're not. Lena looked up, eyes cold and clear. We are tonight. The room went silent. She held out her hand. 18 gauge, second intercostal, high and mid-clavicular, now. No one moved. Then slowly the SEAL's pulse line dipped again. The resident who'd been watching her since the first code stepped forward, ripping open a kit and slapping the needle into her palm. Here. The attending sputtered. You can't just... You shock him, you kill him, Lena said. You decompress him, you give him a chance. She didn't wait for permission. She cleaned, aligned, and drove the needle home with the kind of fluid, terrifyingly precise motion that only came from doing it in places where there was no backup and no second chances. For a breathless second, nothing happened. Then the monitor line shivered, flattened, and climbed. The SEAL's chest rose in a deeper, cleaner breath. His color shifted by a shade, just enough for trained eyes to see. The resident exhaled. Pressure's creeping back. He's responding. A hush fell over the room so complete Lena could feel the buzz of the fluorescent lights through it. Nobody argued now. They worked. She issued orders like she was back with her unit, calm, precise, unshakable. Fluids regulated, oxygen titrated, rhythm monitored. Every doctor in the room moved around her, not because she outranked them on paper, but because in that moment, they all knew exactly who the real lead was. Within minutes, the SEAL's vitals climbed from catastrophic to dangerous. Then from dangerous to fragile. His breathing evened out. The alarms went from screaming to murmuring. Only then did Lena step back, chest rising and falling like she'd just run miles without moving at all. The attending stared at her. All the color drained from his face. What did you just do? He whispered. Lena swallowed, suddenly aware of every pair of eyes pinned on her scrubs, on her badge, on the tiny RN that suddenly felt hilariously inadequate. You call it a decompression with hemodynamic salvage, she said softly. We called it Tuesday night. The SEAL stirred. His eyes fluttered open just a crack, finding her like there was nobody else in the room. His voice was a rough scrape of gravel. Doc. Ward. Her breath caught. She hadn't heard that name in years. Not here. Not in a place with coffee cups and volunteer vests and painted walls. The attending cleared his throat, quietly this time. Let's give them a minute. For the first time since the ambulance doors burst open, nobody argued about her staying. The team filtered out, murmuring, casting backward glances that held something very different than the condescension she'd grown used to. Respect, confusion, something in between. The door clicked shut. It was just her and the man on the bed, and the ghosts. His lips were cracked. She dipped a swab, moistening them gently. You're not supposed to be awake yet, she said, trying for lightness and missing by a mile. He managed the smallest smile. You were never good at following rules either. She huffed out a laugh that wasn't quite a laugh. Silence settled, thick and heavy. Finally, he whispered, You disappeared. So did you. His fingers twitched, as if trying to reach for something he couldn't name. They told us you died, he choked out. They said Doc Ward went down with the rest of the team. We carved your name into a wall, Lena. We toasted you at every reunion. I've been saluting a ghost for 5 years. She swallowed hard. I thought it was better that way, she said. For who? He asked. She didn't answer, because she didn't know anymore. A soft knock broke the moment. The door opened just enough for a figure in a neatly pressed uniform to step through. Not tactical, administrative, the kind of ironed perfection that always made her throat tighten. Ms. Ward, the officer said, voice careful. Lena straightened, all the warmth draining out of her face, replaced by the cool neutrality she'd learned the hard way. Just Nurse Ward, she replied. His gaze flicked to the SEAL, then back to her. We both know that's not quite true. The SEAL tried to push himself up. Sir, with respect, at ease, Captain, the officer said. You're under medical care, which from the report I just read, His eyes returned to Lena. You're fortunate to still be in need of. Lena folded her arms, the paper gown rustling faintly as the seal shifted. What do you want? She asked. Officially. He lifted a folder, thin but heavy in the way only classified things could be. To inform you that your file is being unsealed for internal review, and to apologize that anyone in this building ever thought you were just a rookie. Unofficially? The seal rasped. The officer's shoulders softened. Unofficially, he said quietly, I came to tell you that you didn't fail him. Lena's stomach dropped. Don't, she whispered. Don't say his name. I won't, the officer replied. But I will say this. The man who died that night didn't die because of you. He died because he chose to stay in that kill zone to buy you time to get the others out. That's not speculation. That's on the after action. He ordered you to leave. You followed it. You didn't abandon him. You obeyed him. Her throat clenched. She'd replayed that night 1,000 times in her mind, always with the same verdict. If I had been better, faster, stronger, he'd be alive. Now here was a stranger saying the thing she'd never given herself permission to believe. The SEAL watched her, eyes shining in a way that had nothing to do with painkillers. Told you, he murmured. You saved us, all of us. He'd knock your helmet off if he heard you arguing with that. The officer stepped closer to the bed, then looked at the captain. Can you sit up? With help, he grunted. Lena moved on instinct, supporting him with gentle hands, adjusting lines and leads, doing the simple, practical things that had always felt safe. The officer stepped back, leaving a clear line of sight between them. Captain, he said, you requested to address the staff when you were stable. They're outside. They can hear through the glass. Lena's head snapped toward the window. Beyond the blinds, she could just make out shapes. White coats, scrubs, silhouettes clustered in the hallway, pretending they weren't listening. A flush of embarrassment shot up her neck. They don't need... They do, the SEAL cut in. He took a breath, teeth clenched, then forced his left arm, his good arm, up to his chest. Slow, deliberate. He straightened as much as the IV lines would allow. And then in front of every doctor who'd rolled their eyes at her badge, every colleague who'd called her sweet instead of skilled, what? Every resident who'd joked that she was too quiet for trauma. And he gave her a full, formal battlefield-grade salute. It was shaky. It was imperfect. It was the most devastatingly powerful thing she'd seen in years. Ma'am, he said, voice rough but clear, projecting enough to carry through the glass. For the record, this hospital did not save my life tonight. Lena's heart stuttered. He didn't break eye contact. You did, he finished. Again. Silence crashed over the room. Outside, no one moved. No one whispered. They just watched as a man built by war saluted a nurse they'd refused to see. Slowly, Lena's hand lifted. Not quite a salute. Not quite a refusal. Something in between. An acknowledgement that they were both still here. The officer cleared his throat, eyes glistening more than his rank would ever admit. For what it's worth, he said softly, Command got this wrong the first time. We're trying not to make the same mistake twice. There's a reactivation track open to you, advisory, training, whatever you want to call it. Or you can stay here. Build a life in the quiet. But either way, he nodded toward the door. They'll never look at you the same again. Lena let out a slow breath. I don't need them to worship me, she said. I know, the SEAL replied, but you deserve for them to see you. For the first time in a long time, she let herself imagine a future that didn't revolve around running away from who she'd been or pretending she'd never existed. Maybe she could be both. Lena Ward, RN, Doc Ward, ghost medic, two halves of the same woman finally allowed to stand in the same room. She squeezed the SEAL's hand gently. Rest, she whispered. You're safe. His eyes drifted shut, not from sedation, but from something softer. Trust. Lena stepped into the hallway. Every head turned. For a heartbeat, nobody spoke. Then the attending, the same man who tried to shove her aside, stepped forward. His voice was hoarse. Nurse Ward, he said, I owe you an apology and about 3 decades of humility training. A few people chuckled weakly. He swallowed. If you're willing, he added, I want you to help us rebuild our trauma protocols. Clearly, there are things you know that we don't. Lena's instinct was to shrink back, to say no, to disappear. Instead, she heard her own voice say, if we do this, we do it together. Every voice, every badge. No more assuming the quiet ones don't know anything. The resident who'd handed her the needle earlier nodded fiercely. Deal. The hallway loosened. Something uncurled in her chest. She walked away from the room, not smaller, not invisible, but solid, seen, real. And for the first time since she'd come home, the memories of sand and rotors and distant gunfire didn't feel like weights chained to her. They felt like roots. If you're still here, listening to this, I want to ask you something. Every day, someone like Lena walks past us, quiet, overlooked, carrying more than we'll ever know. If you believe people like that deserve to be seen, if you believe the word rookie never tells the whole story, please subscribe. It costs you nothing, but it means everything to this channel. Drop a comment that says never judge so I know you made it to the end, because as long as you're here, listening, these stories and the quiet heroes inside them will never be forgotten.